Brandon Gill, congratulations.
Thank you.
So you won the Republican primary for the 26th congressional district. You beat 10 other candidates. How did you do that?
Listen, we ran a very data-driven campaign, and we knew going into March 5th that things were looking really good for us. At the end of the day, what the people of Texas 26 are looking for is a conservative fighter. They're looking for somebody who's going to defend President Trump, somebody who's going to fight to secure the southern border and to rein in wasteful spending in Washington. And I was endorsed by President Trump. I was endorsed by Senator Cruz and the House Freedom Fund, which is the political wing of the Freedom Caucus. And that's exactly what the people of Texas 26 are looking for. And we made sure that they knew that I am a conservative fighter. And at the end of the day, they could see through that. They could see through the attacks, excuse me. We had over $2 million spent in attack ads against me from DC swamp super PACs telling lies about me. But the people could see through it, and they were looking for a conservative fighter, and that's what I am.
What was it about your message, do you think, that most resonated with the voters about what you were telling them as far as your policy positions?
I think the number one issue, and you might even say the issue right now, is the border. We have had millions upon millions upon millions of illegal aliens flooding into this country under the Biden administration. And I think over the past 3 years, it's become extremely clear to everybody who's paying attention that the border crisis is intentional, that we had a secure border under President Trump, just looking at it very simplistically. As soon as Joe Biden got elected, as soon as he got into office, he got rid of every major border control policy that President Trump had in place. The crisis is intentional, and we know that the Democrats are trying to flood the country with drugs and crime and to destabilize our social system, and they're trying to flood the country with voters. And I think the people of Texas 26 are sick of it, and they want somebody who's going to fight back.
So you talked about the border. What is your solution? If you were, once, if and when you're elected, it's obviously a Republican majority district.
Yep.
So what would your solution be? What would you propose when you get to Washington?
I think first we've got to go back to the Trump-era policies that were working. So we've got to bring back Remain in Mexico. We've got to reform our asylum laws. We've got to finish construction of the border wall. Luckily, we did get Alejandro Mayorkas impeached. I think that was a great move. But we've got to go back to the border policies we had under President Trump that were working. And then once we've done that, we've got to start looking seriously at deporting the illegal aliens that Joe Biden brought into the country.
Where are you on that bipartisan bill that was developed in the Senate and then rejected?
Yep. So here's the way I look at this is whenever you're negotiating with somebody, you're sitting on opposite sides of a table with somebody. You don't negotiate with somebody who operates in bad faith. And I think that the left, particularly on the border crisis, operates in bad faith. I think that they are intentionally trying to flood this country with voters. I think that the border bill that was ostensibly negotiated is a disgrace, and I would not be in favor of it.
What are your other priorities aside from the border?
I think that we've got to get Washington out of interfering in everyday personal liberties, and we've got to cut wasteful spending. I mean, we've been running up a deficit for year after year after year, decade after decade, and we've got to cut wasteful spending.
What suggestions do you have on that front as far as the wasteful spending?
I think that across the board, government, Washington is too big. We've got to have a federal government that's small enough to fit within the bounds of the Constitution.
And as far as, when you talk, when you say that, are you looking for like a percentage that everybody has to cut? All departments? What would not be cut, etc.?
Well, listen, we're funding all kinds of stuff that the government should have no role in, whether it's DEI programs across the board, whether it's funding the left-wing social agenda, funding abortion and things related to abortion. There's a lot that needs to be cut in Washington.
And as far as the budget was concerned, because the House just passed spending plans, the Senate did as well late last week. How would you have voted? Because that was the second half of the spending measures. The first half obviously passed as well. So what would you have done in both cases?
I think Chuck Schumer was really happy with that bill that got passed last Friday, and I would have voted no.
Why?
I think that a continuation of Nancy Pelosi level spending is not what the American people elected Republicans to do. They elected us to cut spending, cut wasteful spending, and promote a responsible government, not to fund left-wing priorities.
Speaker Johnson said there were some conservative victories in the spending plans, and he voted for it. I'm wondering what your message to him would be, because there's been a lot of disagreement within the House Republicans as to spending, as to the border and how that's being prioritized, etc. So, what would your message be? Do you support Speaker Johnson?
Well, listen, the first thing I would say is that $1.2 trillion is too much. Nancy Pelosi level spending needs to end, and the majority of Republicans voted against the bill.
And so, would you support Speaker Johnson if, when you get to the House, he's still Speaker?
Well, we'll see if he's still Speaker whenever I get to the House. I've never worked with Speaker Johnson. I haven't spoken to him personally, so we'll see whenever we get there.
You mentioned abortion, and I know Democrats are making this a campaign issue nationally and here in Texas. And I don't suppose you agree with them on codifying Roe v. Wade, but I'm wondering on the flip side, do you support a national ban, or is this something you would prefer the states to decide for themselves, or is there something else?
Well, to be very clear, I am 100% pro-life. That's been a big priority for both my wife and me. In fact, my wife, Danielle, wrote a book about abortion where she systematically debunks the left's pro-abortion arguments. So I think that the goal legislatively should be to save lives, save innocent babies from being slaughtered.
Does that mean you would support a national ban, or is that something you prefer the states to handle?
I would take a look at it. I mean, again, I think that the goal is to save innocent lives.
Let me ask you about this bill that would force the sale of TikTok from Chinese ownership or just ban it in the United States. Passed the House, the Senate hasn't taken it up yet. How would you have voted on that?
Well, listen, TikTok is very clearly a disgrace. It's a stain on our social fabric. It is promoting propaganda. It's a cultural poison. Now, in terms of how we deal with that, we want to make sure that the solution isn't worse than the problem itself. And that's the question that we've got to ask for TikTok.
And so what does that mean as far as, that legislation? Because, there were some conservatives who voted against the bill, but many voted obviously for it, overwhelmingly. How would you have voted for that?
I have not read the legislation. We've been focused on things in the district. But again, TikTok is a very clear cultural poison.
Let me ask you about the calls for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Do you support that?
No. We had a ceasefire before Hamas invaded Israel and slaughtered innocent people.
And what do you make of the strong criticism of Israel as it relates from Democrats in Congress? Senator Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, very heavily criticized Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you agree with that?
No, I do not.
Why not?
I think that Israel is our strongest ally in the Middle East. It is a beacon of freedom and democracy in a desert wasteland of Islamic despotism. They're our allies, and we need to stand with them.
Do you think that the Republicans are going to maintain control of the House? And what do you make of the razor-thin margin that exists right now from Republicans leaving?
Yeah, I do think we are going to not only maintain the majority, but expand the majority. I think the American people can see what's happening under Joe Biden, and they're sick of it. And they're looking for some change, not only at the White House, and I'm very confident President Trump's going to get reelected, but I think that they're looking to bring in more Republicans to stand with President Trump in his second term. And I'm feeling very good about it. I do think that we're going to have to learn how to govern with maybe a slightly smaller majority than we have in the past. That's just what the maps look like post-2020 redistricting. But we're feeling really good about going into this fall.
And what do you see as the keys to success in governing if a as you said, the majority is going to be smaller than in past years.
Yeah, maybe to use a sports analogy, the goal for a conservative in Congress right now should be to make sure if we can take this 6-yard run, let's take that instead of throwing Hail Marys every play. I'm as conservative as it gets, and we need to push the ball forward in the right direction, and I think that we can do that with a stronger majority.
And my last question to you is, what kind of congressman do you want to be, as far as somebody who's out there fighting the big fights, somebody who's more based on constituent services, helping out the district needs, etc.?
Well, in D.C., of course, we're going to be on the front lines fighting for conservative values in Washington. We're going to make sure we take care of things here at home as well. I think Dr. Burgess has served this district honorably, and he's done a great job of taking care of his constituents, making sure their needs are met, and we're going to make sure to continue that.
And is there anything that you've heard just as you've been campaigning around the district, what people want?
I think the people of Texas 26 are looking for a conservative fighter, somebody who's going to fight to secure the border, somebody who's going to fight to end the weaponization of government, somebody who's going to stand behind and beside President Trump, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Brandon Gill, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your time.